The February 21st Planning Commission meeting. Planning Commission meeting for February. I'm Rich Spiker. I'm Vice Chair and acting this today. Mark Klecker, I know, is absent. Tony Mansanowski is not here. Colin?
Present.
Jason?
Present.
Okay, so we have a quorum and can proceed. First item on the agenda is approval of the January 17th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item is a minor subdivision at 2366 Buffalo Road. Is there anyone here to speak on it?
I did get an email from the property owner. I'm not sure whether I actually haven't even had a chance to look at it, but there wasn't confirmation on whether somebody was going to be here to answer any questions, but I can certainly answer any questions as far as the subdivision itself. I did review the proposal. As you can see, there's an existing house on the lot. It's kind of a double lot. There's an existing house. I was informed that the intent to cut the house off from the rest of the property is so that this property behind, which is landlocked, would have access. I don't know that they're going to combine the two lots, but at least that was going to be dedicated to provide access to the landlocked parcel. Now you will see that I asked them to file a letter of modification, a modification request, because it technically doesn't meet the 60-foot width requirement. Mm-hmm. I will say that all of the other houses on that block, which is over by the old Meadowbrook factory, mm-hmm. all of the other lots are 40-foot lots. So this would fall in line with, creating a similar size lot. And there was no intention that I'm aware of to build on that lot. It was going to be used to basically for an access way. If, however, they choose to build on it, obviously they would have to meet all the setback requirements and things of that nature.
Okay. The review have any questions, concerns?
I mean, I feel like it would have been helpful if one of them were here just to provide some of those details, even if they are hypotheticals, to understand a bit better.
Okay. We have a motion to approve this minor subdivision.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4, blighted property designation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. In front of you today is a resolution for the Planning Commission to designate blighted 35 properties that were blighted by the Blighted Property Review Committee over many, many different dates and times, probably over the last 5 to 7 years. It's like I said, it's 35 properties, 22 of which are part of the Redevelopment Authority's ARP Blight Mitigation Program. The other 13 properties are part of the Erie Land Bank's 2023 work plan. So together, the 35 properties is an aggressive fight toward blight within the city of Erie and an effort to mitigate those hazards and try to aggressively push those vacant properties and mitigate those out of the neighborhoods. So there's a lot of properties there. Unless you want to speak on one property in particular, I mean, I can highlight a couple troubled properties. That I'm sure code enforcement would be down here to tell you that every single one of them is a troubled property and something that should be taken care of a lot sooner than we have now. But we have 901 West 4th Street, which is the old 901 Sports Bar and Grill, Bayview Tavern, on the corner there of 4th and Plum. There's 1408 West 8th Street, property out there right as you get off the bayfront that's been vacant for some time. A couple properties on East Avenue, along with ECAT and their push toward that East Avenue corridor, an effort to continue the revitalization that the land bank has over there. We acquired 2 properties over the last year on East Avenue as well. So just some properties that, continue to, like I said, fit the plan of the redevelopment authority's blight mitigation, so.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Mr. Skipper? Huh? Yes, yeah. I'll note that I am the Planning Commission's designated member to the Blighted Property Review Committee. I attend every month.
And you would tell us if there was any concerns, right? So
Yeah, no,
I make a motion to approve.
So I just had one quick, question on that. Would it be possible going forward, so first off, I think it's great to see this many properties moving forward. Would it be possible to, in those packets, see what, if any, crime stats may be associated with those properties going forward?
Yeah,
Obviously not looking to get, you go back for this. I think it's great, but I think it'd be helpful just more visibility into the impact some of these are having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait a second.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yep. Keep up the good work. Next item, we're having a discussion on housing and shelters for homeless. Dave, are you going to kick off the discussion?
I'm Dave Forrest, I'm a planning director, and just to bring you up to speed, Mr. Nelson and Jake and I had a conversation with a couple of gentlemen who are involved in the homeless permanent supportive housing initiative, because the last time we met and talked about incorporating homeless shelters and transitional housing in our zoning regulations, you asked that we try to get some experts to come in and give you some guidance. So we did have a good conversation, but they're sort of in the process of development right now, and they felt reluctant to come before the board, even necessarily with anything out of general. So we're back to square one, I guess, and we'll try to identify some resources for you so you can get sort of up to speed with the issue and how to address it through our zoning. But maybe you have some other thoughts on that as well that you want to share.
Well, it's certainly something that I think needs to be addressed. It appears there's a hole or a gap in our current zoning ordinance with regard to the location for these facilities. And I think that the discussion we have with the potential developers was very interesting and forward looking, I think, but I think we need guidance as to how to accommodate the transitional housing within the zoning ordinance. I mean, in one sense, it's housing, period. And we just simply need to make room for it in the various districts that the city currently has.
Is there any harm in, I know this may be unorthodox, but opening up the question to the broader public and getting just sort of opening a wide net to hear what some of the thoughts or concerns even, so we can maybe more proactively, ask those questions of developers, kind of use that to guide some of what we would use for developing these policies. Understand what some of the concerns are from the public or ideas that there may be for areas, kind of make it so both it's available to the general public as well as obviously some of the nonprofits that serve them.
A survey instrument, you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
No, let me think about how that would work.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to make it worse than it already might be.
It might be information overload.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, there's certainly people, there are downtown stakeholders, both in the private sector and the nonprofit sector, that I'm sure have an opinion on it. And let me work on this some more, and I'll be, back in touch with the board leadership and try to come up with a strategy. But I got to think that there are people who would like to talk to you about this.
I figured there might be a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think seeking some public input would be good. But I think we need some forward direction to
Absolutely.
frame a discussion as opposed before simply getting people's reaction.
Some of it should be, we look at the zoning map and
Yeah,
kind of over the layer of thinking with where in
Yeah.
the city does it feel like these uses should be, and how does that relate to the zoning map, right?
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Doing it as, we should review the zoning map and how it relates to what actually is in place. You know, there's some disconnect from the zoning map to realities, right? So when we decide where we think the areas in the city we should target to locate these, and we're just picking whatever zoning districts that we want to integrate them into, right? So what's the best practice in other communities for
Well-
where to put transitional housing?
I think that's probably what you need to hear from some experts about, because I think that my understanding is that needs to be transitional housing and homeless shelters need to be close to services and transit and
Yeah, so
things like
urban,
that.
urban core is where we're looking, not
urban
in
core.
the R districts.
But where in the urban core,
Yeah.
I guess is the question. I mean, if you haven't looked at the comprehensive plan recently, you might want to start there and see what it sort of generally says about this. I think there's at least a small section that I found that deals with this.
Yeah, it's pretty vague, and it just says, get them out of the downtown.
Yeah.
But if you go up Green Garden right now, they'd probably tell you that these belong downtown.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, is the environment downtown really going to change substantially through zoning? Probably not. But it's something I think that we ought to think about just for the future, you know, as development continues and things change. Where would you want, you know, just some intelligent, you know, decision about where should this go, if we want to actually designate it somewhere in the zoning regulations. So it's an important question, I think.
And not to add on, because I know I've already given you plenty to worry about. Would it be possible, and not necessarily from your team, but is there anyone in your government that may have some information around where we see higher levels of individuals that are unhoused or going through transient housing, that there's crime associated with it or any incidents, and then just on top of that, the resources that are frequently available? I mean, looking
Yeah.
at those kind of overlaid might help start to craft why we are where we are, and then how we move towards solution.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we've got good data, but I tell you what, we'll take the next month to see if we can get some data and maybe do a map. I think you can actually even Google a map and it'll kind of show you where some of these facilities are. I know there's anecdotal information about, incidents, but whether that's not statistically significant necessarily. But I know there are discussions about these things among the downtown people who are, concerned about it. But we'll try to pull something together for the next meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jake, any other concerns about that? And we'll continue to table till next month.
Yeah, we'll, I mean, we're not really ready to make any zoning recommendations as far as amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Right.
I think we've kind of identified that there's some missing uses and definitions that we can add to the ordinance, but I think it would be good to get some more information. What comes to my mind is maybe since the county's Department of Human Services really kind of leads this whole realm, maybe we can actually get a representative in from them to give us that broader overview of, the consortium, things of that nature. We've done some inventorying of existing facilities, and that's kind of,
Yeah, that's
being
exactly what- yeah.
updated, that kind of thing. So a lot of that work has kind of been done, but I
Yeah.
think it would just be good to get more information in front of the planning commission. I think from the county standpoint would maybe be another good avenue to get some input from DHS.
Okay. Thank you. Next item is the 2022 annual report. Do we have anything to act on, or we're going to wait for next month?
We have a draft of the report, and just like in previous years, the annual report is essentially a recap of the actions that the Planning Commission has taken the previous year. And those, essentially the activities are broken into a couple of different categories, whether it's ordinance amendments, planning efforts that like the community planning or neighborhood planning efforts that the Planning Commission has weighed in on, right-of-way vacations that the Planning Commission has weighed in on, waterfront conditional use applications, and frankly, we obviously had a little bit of everything: blighted property review and designation. So those are the main categories of activities that the Planning Commission is involved in every year. I think last year probably we had more waterfront conditional use applications than I can remember, at least in the last handful of years since I've been here. A lot of activity along the waterfront, and that's a good thing. I mean, we're seeing more private investment in our waterfront districts, not just the commercial districts, but the residential districts. So that was kind of an important activity for the Planning Commission to see last year. But we'll be finishing up the report with the recap of those activities and getting it out to the Planning Commission just for your review and endorsement. And our next item on the agenda is something that we wanted to have that discussion before it was finalized and placed at the end of the annual report. So I guess that's kind of a good lead in to the next agenda item.
Okay. Do you have something to discuss at this point, or is that going to come with the draft?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to our planning director to talk a little bit about how we've been developing the priorities for the coming year. And as you're aware, obviously there's things that carry over that are kind of a continual work in progress, like looking at our ordinances, for instance.
Yeah.
But then the idea is what's something that's kind of new on the table. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
You said little bit, and I want to emphasize that. I have a very little bit to say, almost nothing really. We kind of developed a list, our own internal list of things that we think are the top priorities for 2023, and we've shared them with leadership in the administration, and we're waiting to get some feedback from them, and then we'd like to share them with you. But while that's going on, I guess I'm curious what things you would like to do in the coming year as a planning commission. What are, and that's something you don't have to answer today, but maybe that's something you could think about. What are the things that you'd like to be involved in that you're not now, and that are appropriate for a planning commission to be involved in, and how do you see your role expanding?
Let's get the study going to look at form-based zoning like your predecessor was leading us down the road to.
Yeah, I think that
would be a big one.
would be a big improvement in the quality of life considerations for the larger community.
I'd love to see some discussion on design standards for different neighborhoods. There's been a couple developments proposed that do not mesh, I guess to politely say, don't mesh with the sort of feel of a lot of the communities, different neighborhoods that we have. So I think maybe updating and adding a little bit more specificity to some of the design standards might be useful to look at.
Okay. But again, between now and the next meeting, please.
Yeah.
How much influence do we have as a planning commission have over one-way streets?
One-way streets.
We're just shutting down.
What about one-way streets? I'm sorry.
Eliminating.
We just got to get rid of. Some of them are necessary, but there's a lot of them in our town that are, we don't have that traffic capacity.
So you'd like to have a discussion about
Particularly
one-way
in the
streets.
residential neighborhoods, but downtown is endlessly confusing to people
Do
that
you have,
haven't
do you have an
been.
example downtown?
Well, Perry Square goes in the wrong direction.
Pardon me?
Perry Square goes in the wrong direction.
Oh.
It's been changed once before.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so we can have a discussion about, one-way streets and whether they're, always necessary and the pros and cons.
A particular example I can give you is West 8th Street. I know there's already some effort there, but we're looking at new development in the RLB part of West 8th Street, and they only get morning traffic. So if a new restaurant wants to move into that strip, which is happening
Right.
right now, they don't get the happy hour traffic, which would maximize their
I
business.
think that's being looked at, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
know, I'm just,
Yeah, no, I'm not
it's
disagreeing
one
with you.
example of
Right,
probably dozens of others that we should be
okay.
looking at.
Well, I think that's worth doing, yeah.
I mean, even on top of that, I saw a comment this weekend in the Times about, the bringing Perry Square as a whole into one, eliminating that
Yeah.
divide down the middle. So, I mean, there's more ambitious things out there, but I think there's probably a pretty big list that we could come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I think traffic planning in general in the city is kind of a black hole that it just happens without any, without much public input or a sense of direction. I mean, you have French Street and Peach Street and Sassafras that are all one way as a result of a master plan from the early 60s that, have killed those streets as far as retail and activity. They used to be pretty vibrant, and one-way streets are noted for being the death knell of commercial use. So I think it's something that's time it should be revisited.
Okay. You're keeping the list, right, Jake? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got a month and, send Jake your other ideas and we can
Yeah.
regroup next month. Thanks, those are all good ideas, appreciate it.
And I don't expect that it'll be solved next month.
No.
But we need to get it.
Let's start talking about it.
Yeah.
That's start conversation somewhere.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 8, planning and neighborhood resources activity updates.
I don't have,
You can't get away.
I don't have anything prepared, so
Okay.
we'll have an update for you next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 9, public comment. Anybody online or in the meeting that needs to make a comment? Okay.
You can call Jason otherwise.
That's right.
If there are any attendees by Zoom that would like to make any comment, please use that raise hand function.
Looks like we got one.
Freda, go ahead.
Oh, this is Freda Tepper. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I
Yes.
can't hear you, so I have to assume you can hear me. I don't have any volume on the audio. I'm sorry I have missed most of the meeting, but I do want to add that the city needs a traffic mitigation ordinance. It's very important for the city to have a traffic mitigation ordinance because you have projects like the IRG project coming in
Traffic
that are going to
communication.
affect the amount of traffic in this town. And modern cities do have traffic mitigation ordinances. The city does have within its charter the ability to have a traffic mitigation ordinance. Likewise, there needs to be an ordinance that controls how permit holders, construction permit holders, or non-permit holders are allowed to close sidewalks and for what period of time. There are instances where months and months and months sidewalks have been closed, like at the Catholic Church. And the Erie Downtown Development Corporation has set an example for being able to provide alternative ways for people to pass through on the streets with a sidewalk bypass, and this should be the rule rather than the exception. So those two things are needed for the Planning Commission and the city to act on. Thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I think she said she didn't have audio. I was going to ask her if
Yeah.
she could jot those things down and submit them to our office, but I think we have her contact information, so we can get some more
Okay.
info from her.
You reach out and get that followed up? All right,
I have nothing else. No?
nothing? All right, on to item 10, adjournment. All in favor? Or
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you.
Thank you, everybody.